let's get into the player contracts and why this comes up now. By the way, anything Lax has already commented via quote tweets. As a fan, I would love to have all the contracts and salaries be public. It gives fans something more to talk about and will help grow the league. I'm glad you said that, sir, because I have some tweets pulled up on my screenshots here, not on the screen, but you'll see. And basically saying why this came up in the first place, okay? I saw a Dawson Nielsen tweet, and he had quoted TSN's Dave Naylor. I'm not in Canada. Sorry, sir. I'm looking at Sports Center work. According to Pablo Herrera Vergara, CFL and the Players Association open to discussing public salary disclosure. CFL, of course, the Canadian Football League, for those American brethren watching the show. Dave Naylor said this is welcome news. It gives fans something else to dig into. It would really help the CFL's image. So many people think the CFL players make about $25,000 a year. Guessing he means Canadian. Dawson Nielsen then broke it down for NLL terms. So this topic was really inspired by Dawson Nielsen. And it's 2 days ago he tweeted this, but I had to do some digging this morning for the topics and found this very interesting. But Dawson Nielsen of Isle Indoor, Loose Mash, and other things. When the CFL starts talking about public salary disclosure, you can't help but think back to May 2022 when the NLLPA stood with the CFLPA. And he showed a screenshot at Dawson J. Nielsen. You can find that. And honestly, it leads to a pretty simple question, he says. If the CFL is trending towards transparency, how far behind is the NLL? I'll leave that tweet there because we've had a lot of new viewers this season, and I thought it was good to circle back to this topic now because we are under a new CBA for the next 4, maybe 5 years. It was a long off season, but we're here now, and we're excited for this moment. But we still do not know what players are actually making. Now, granted, until you make boatloads of millions of dollars, there's always going to be under-the-table stuff. Just look at Vancouver's roster. That's not even me reporting. That's me just reading the tea leaves and just realizing, there's no way they really have that roster right now. Or maybe they're waiting until the salary cap actually gets super hard next year. I don't know. My point on this stuff is that there always will be some under-the-table stuff, like Dane Smith's bar or whatever, until we make millions of dollars. But it would be nice to know on the surface what are the best or even the lowest salary player making. Like, what is the number? We think we have a general idea. I mentioned that Dane Smith had a $100,000 per year contract, but what does that really mean? And how close to the number was my report on that? Be something to look at. But why does it benefit the NLL? I've got 2 ways, and they're 2 very big ways. The first one is the same old, and I know many people who watch NLL podcasts will be kind of tired of this, so bear with me here. I have said, and others have said multiple times ad nauseum, that it creates discussion. And the NLL needs more discussion. The National Lacrosse League thinks that hiding things, some people thought that hiding things for years was the bright idea. Turns out it wasn't, especially as we move towards 2026, as social media becomes ever more vocal, visible, and popular. Okay? And outspoken. All those good things. But let's get to a second point I think you'll want to hear as well. It actually helps with negotiations. Like, people are going to say, the biggest knock on this is, and it's a great point, according to Vance in LA on Twitter, that's VANCEINLA, says, I think disclosure would be a mistake. The salaries are minuscule compared to other major sports, which would reinforce a minor league narrative. Now, he's talking about the CFL. And I raise you, the NLL who's probably, I don't know, probably, but might be. I think they are in a worse situation financially than the CFL because people in their mentions were saying 70,000 is the minimum. I don't know how true that is, but it sounds like it's more than the NLL gets or players get. So but I don't think that's true though. I don't think that would make. I don't think fans would ultimately care. And Dave Naylor, to that response to that, says there aren't enough characters, meaning like limits on Twitter, in the universe for me to disagree with this enough. Old thinking that stunts the CFL. We might get criticized has been the league's mantra for 30 years. Dude, great response. I feel like this guy could also be an NLL analyst. The way that is exactly what NLL people think. But again, I'm not worried about that. I believe it helps negotiations. When we know that, let's say, I don't think Zach Curry would be a victim of this considering he's part of the PA. But let's say an unsung hero on your favorite team is not getting paid as much as a guy who is just empty stats in the end, okay? Let's say that you think your guy deserves better. Well, enough fans get behind that. It does influence things sometimes because then the player and his agent can say, hey, well, everyone else agrees that I'm an invaluable asset. That could help. It could also help the team. So it's like a win-win here. Like the teams could realize, oh, well, this player A on this team is not even making that much, and he outperforms you. It all works out. Again, the discussion alone, so many other topics on sports are like so many topics on sports television are about money. Well, this guy's making a bunch of money. He's outperformed it or he's underperformed his contract. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal in other sports. And then you add the fact negotiations on both sides can be helped. I love this idea. And again, shout out Dawson Nielsen, shout out Dave Naylor, and shout out to Pablo Herrera Vergara for that thing where he's talked. I think he reported it maybe the first time. But yeah. Cody Jansen says, fully agree. Have to think rookies want public salaries. That's a good point. And there is truth to the veterans don't, which is why I kind of like didn't mention Zach Currier in that same breath because veterans are, getting the cash right now. Unlike Chris Paul of the NBA, if Chris Paul is in the NLL, he might be getting a big time paycheck. It's like, well, come on now. You don't really perform that much. Story for another day. But again, if you're a rookie, like look at Mike Byrne, okay? How great he was in his first game. You don't think he's looking like, wait a dang. Not saying Mike Byrne specifically, but a Mike Byrne adjacent player, like, wait a dang minute. I'm better than this. Again, it works so many different ways. And if the only knock on this is, well, fans are going to think we're not making that much. Great. We know this, and now it's confirmed. I love it. I think it helps so many different ways, and it doesn't help in so little ways. I think it's a great thing. Again, thank you to those people tweeting about that.